What is up, guys? Today, I'm going to be sharing one of the most important tools I've used to progress my shooting skill faster than most. I've been doing this for years now, and it keeps me from losing my current skill level from depreciating. As you all know, like most other sports, shooting is a depreciating skill, so it has to be continuously trained to maintain it. Of course, you won't be starting from zero if you take a little break from it and return to it later, but if your goal is to improve in any skill, you have to continuously train it or you'll stay stagnant. There's a lot of us that don't have the budget to shoot live rounds every day to keep the training going. But that doesn't mean you can't train at all. There's this thing called dry fire, and it's instrumental in increasing your proficiency with your gun handling while keeping your performance up in between range sessions. This was the key factor in my early training and development when it came to shooting. Buying a ton of ammo to shoot was very difficult at that time, so it was very important to find other ways to train outside of sending rounds downrange. I do want to make a point to say that dry fire will not ever replace live fire, same as live fire should not replace dry fire. Both of these forms of training should complement each other to create a more complete training regimen. Dry fire is very important because you can work on 90% of your shooting skills without having to shoot a single shot. For me, when it comes to dry fire, one of the most important things that I focus on is grip. This is why I firmly believe being able to consistently get a master grip from the draw is far more important than going fast. When I say master grip, I simply mean getting a good high purchase on the handgun with your shooting hand. This ensures good positive contact with your hand and the gun, enabling you to control as much recoil as possible. Now, going back to my previous point, I'm not saying don't go fast. You should always push yourself to go as fast as you possibly can. But you also want to learn how to go faster while maintaining a sound foundation. I see a lot of people drawing and getting crazy fast first shot times, but if you ask them to do the same thing with 2 or 3 shots instead of 1, you'll see the group size really open up, pretty much covering the entire man-sized target. And that's because they sacrificed good grip for speed. So push yourself until things start to fall apart, and then learn how you can raise the roof on that limit. Now, moving on to live fire. Live fire is where I really concentrate on recoil management. I can see where my deficiencies are in my grip and posture. I can also get better at shooting at different conformation levels and put all my dry fire mechanics to the test. When I decide to live fire, I really break it into 2 parts. First is correcting any mistakes I see myself making while pushing myself. And then second, I start taking mental notes on things I need to improve on. And when I take those notes, I immediately take that and apply it to my next dry fire session. This is an ongoing cycle, and I found this to keep me moving in my shooting journey. So in this video, I'm not gonna take you step by step on what you should be working on in dry fire. What I'm gonna do is show you what my current dry fire sessions look like so you can get a rough sense on what it can look like. Me personally, I typically only dry fire between 10 to 30 minutes a day, and I do my best to practice rifle and pistol each session. I find pistol mechanics tend to be more difficult to master than rifle mechanics, only because there are so many more nuances when it comes to pistols. I do want to say my dry fire for rifle has changed a little bit, and that's because I've been working really hard on shooting at more distance than just close range. But that should be another tip for you guys. Your dry fire sessions can change depending on what goals you want to achieve. They shouldn't always be the same unless you're trying to work on a specific skill and nail it down. All right, so we've talked about the importance of dry fire and live fire. So what will you need in order to get started with dry fire on your own? Now, I do want to segue into some safety precautions. I know for the majority of us, what I'm about to say in a minute is common sense, but I'd still be doing you guys a disservice for not presenting it. If you're going to dry fire, you need to be in a safe environment of your choosing and aware of what is around you. Now, when I say what is around you, I'm not just talking about your immediate vicinity. If you're gonna dry fire in a garage, you need to know what is past the walls in the garage. So you choose the safest direction you can dry fire. We're obviously gonna follow the same firearm safety rules, and we're not gonna point our gun at anything we're not willing to destroy. So as you can see behind me, I do have some targets set up because I do not want to be pointing this at anything I'm not willing to destroy. I know some of us live in urban environments where this can be a challenge, but still, try to choose the safest wall available to you. Now, before you even touch your firearm for dry fire, you need to make sure all the ammo available to you is put away somewhere safe. I really want to emphasize on this because all it takes is just one mistake for you to have a really, really bad day. So make sure you completely remove ammo from the equation. I typically like to put ammo in a separate room. It just makes it easier for me. I don't have to think as much on like what mags I can and cannot use. I also like to dry fire with magazines. So what I've done is buy some snap caps. And what I usually do is only load up my snap caps 2 bullets at a time. That way I can see the follower, even if my bullets are in there, I can see the follower behind it. And throughout my dry fire sessions, I'm constantly checking the state of my magazines and my firearm. I know this may sound like overkill, but I'd rather be super safe than, like I said, have that one mistake that could ruin my life. All right, now onto the gear. Really, the only thing you need for dry fire is a firearm. I really think the gun you should be dry firing with the most should be the gun that you use the most. Whether it be your concealed carry gun or a gun you use for work, i.e. law enforcement or military, or the gun of choice you use for competing. I really think you should stick with that one platform when training and trying to progress in your shooting progress. I say this because I find some people are having a hard time grasping new concepts when it comes to training because they're constantly switching out their firearms. And I'm not saying you can't have a gun rotation, but if you are trying to learn and get a little faster, it's a lot easier if you just stick with one platform. Now, my word is not law, and I'm not going to attack anyone that likes to switch it up frequently, but from my experience, staying on a single platform makes it drastically easier to identify my shortcomings in my training. So today, I'll be using my good old Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 and my IWI Zion 15 rifle. Now that we've chosen the gun that we want to train with, we need to address what form of retention we want to train with as well. Now, there are dry fire sessions that don't require you to utilize a holster, and that's because sometimes I'm strictly focused on target transitions and trigger discipline, and that doesn't require defeating retention. But I would say 80% of the time, I'm throwing on a holster just to get the reps in. There are usually 2 types of holsters that people typically train with, but today I'm going to be using my concealment holster because I want to be able to draw from my waistband and defeat my garment just like I would be in a self-defense situation. But you can also definitely train with your outside the waistband holster. I actually see a lot of people doing that more than just doing concealment, but again, it just depends on what you want to achieve. If you're just doing this strictly for self-protection, draw from how you carry your gun. But if this is for IDPA or USPSA, or like I said, work, draw from outside the waistband. I primarily practice drawing from concealment because that is something I want to excel in if I'm presented with a situation. I'm not military or law enforcement, so I rarely carry outside the waistband. I do for certain competitions, but even then, inside the waistband holsters are allowed, so I typically run that. Here, I have a Tier 1 concealed Axis Elite holster. I know some of you guys are gonna ask, so want to share that with you guys, and this is also what I'll be demoing with today. I do have a Safariland holster that I do some reps with, but like I said, I stick with this most of the time. The cool thing is a lot can transfer over from either setup, so there's no right or wrong answer on which one you should prioritize. It's completely up to you. Now, the next piece of equipment isn't completely required in order to start dry firing, but it can positively affect how you track your training progress. And that piece of equipment is a timer. This is a pack timer, and I use this to gauge how fast I complete certain tasks in dry fire, and I also use it as a stimulus. If you're wanting to get into the competition world, you'll definitely benefit from using one of these. Timers like this can really help you work on your reaction time, and this plays a huge role when trying to speed up your draws or your reloads. Well, at least that's what I mainly use my timer for in dry fire, and of course, I do the same thing in live fire. All right, so I know some of you guys are thinking, I've got my gun and my holster, but what about targets? And the really cool thing about targets is that you don't have to buy any. For years, I used appliances, light switches, tapes, even sticky notes to set up an arrangement of targets in my immediate vicinity. You don't have to have a specific shaped target to learn good sight acquisition and target transitions. It wasn't until recently that I started printing out USPSA and IDPA targets online to tape to the wall. It takes less than 10 minutes to print and cut these out, so if you have a printer at home, I highly recommend doing that. PistolWizard.com provides a plethora of targets you can download and print out for your own personal use. They also downscale their targets to simulate distance, which is pretty cool. A bonus tip I like to throw out there is that I like to go to the YouTube channel Dry Fire King because sometimes they use swingers and poppers, and as of right now, that's the closest thing I can get to the real thing. So I love going to their YouTube channel and just trying some of the courses they provide. One more thing you can add to your dry fire is if you're using a red dot, put some tape over the front of the red dot. This is called dot occlusion, and it really helps you figure out if you're being target focused or dot focused. You always want to be target focused, so when that goes up, if you're seeing a crisp dot and nothing else, you're dot focused. But if you can see the target and you see the dot super impeding onto the target, then you're target focused. And it's a really cool training tool. Remember guys, your dry fire sessions will only be beneficial in accordance to how much you put in. If you're being lazy or lack the discipline to hold yourself accountable during those 10 to 30 minutes, then you will not get what you want from it. A lot of people treat dry fire like it's a chore, when you should be treating it like a stepping stone, a building block to something bigger. But now I'm done lecturing, let's actually move over to some dry fire. All right, so I'm set up for the dry fire session, and what I'm gonna be doing to start off with is just drawing and getting on target. So I have 3 USPSA targets up on the door, and yeah, I'm just gonna do a couple of reps and try to get on target as fast as I can. I'm using the PAC timer, which I showed you guys earlier in the video, and I have the par time set to 1 second. So I always try to push myself to get at least out of the holster and on target within 1 second, and then I pull the trigger. There we go. All right, so now I have 2 targets I'm gonna be transitioning back and forth to. So I'm gonna start with the target on the right. I'm gonna draw, present, and then I'm gonna transition to this target over here. My main focus is to get my eye onto the second target as fast as possible and have the gun follow. I don't wanna be driving the gun and forcing it over to the target, because when I do that, sometimes you'll see the dot will, or your gun, your red dot on your gun will over travel and you have to correct yourself. So I don't wanna over travel. I wanna get onto target and be able to stop right away. So I'm gonna do a couple of reps and see how I do. All right, so I got some draws and some transitions in. So now I'm gonna work on reloads. I've been having a lot of trouble with reloads recently just because the M&P, as you can see, doesn't have a flared mag well. So I have to be very precise on how I get my magazine into my gun. So this is something I've been practicing on a good bit. And what I'm gonna do is, again, I'm gonna go from draw just so I can get the rep in. And then I'm gonna do 2 shots. No, I'm gonna do 4 shots and then reload another 4. All right, let's do this. All right, so the last drill I'm gonna do is actually draw and shoot on the move. This has been a challenge for me in my IDPA matches when I've had to shoot and move at the same time. I see myself struggling on my draw, so now I wanna work on getting that draw while on the move and getting a few shots off. So I have my target over here. It's, I don't know, this is probably 3 yards away, but you know, I showed you guys the small targets, so it's simulated to be a little further, and I'm gonna come back a little bit. This one I'm not gonna waste too much time on just because it's not something that needs to be worked on super hard, because I can do it. I just wanna do it a little bit more efficiently. All right guys, so as you can see, I've moved over to rifle, and it's almost identical to pistol at the beginning. I just really work on getting the rifle up and into my eye line and on target as fast as I can as my first drill. My second drill, I also do transitions, but then, like I said, I modified my dry fire for rifle to where now I go prone and I work on my breathing and trigger pull. So we're gonna start off with just getting the rifle up and ready to fire. And what I'm gonna do, my main thing, you know, like how I talk about grip for pistol, my main thing for rifle is getting the rifle into the meat of my shoulder right here, not on the outside, because if I'm outside and I'm recoiling the gun, it's gonna pop off eventually. I want it as close to the inside as I can. For me, there's a feeling between my collarbone and my shoulder that really gets a nice firm grasp and it really wraps around the stock of the gun. And what I do is I shrug up. A lot of people, they'll put their gun on the shoulder and they drop down to see what they need to see. Let me actually adjust this because this is not where it needs to be. A lot of people will drop down to try to see through their optic. You know, I think it's more efficient to bring the optic up to you so you don't have to worry about your neck cramping when you're trying to shoot. When I'm like this, I can drop it up right here and I'm ready to shoot. Boom. Sometimes I have to make fine adjustments and that's okay, but it's better than dropping and then trying to get everything lined up. Especially with the LPVO, you do not want to be fishing around trying to find that reticle. So guys, this is pretty much the last thing I end my dry fire with. I have a towel down just because I'm in the garage and the floor can get pretty dirty, but you can do this inside. You don't have to use a towel or anything like that. But pretty much I go prone and I work on my breathing. I work on getting good shoulder connection, a very good purchase. And I also work on getting my body very relaxed before I pull the trigger. And I work on my follow-throughs as well. So I'm just gonna show you what I've been working on, and if any of you guys do long range shooting and you have some time behind the gun for long range, I just got into it, I kid you not, maybe like a month or two ago. So I'm still learning a lot of stuff. If you have advice, put it down below. I mean, I'm learning from people that are local to me, and I have no problem learning from you guys in the comments. Again, I just want to emphasize my channel isn't a place where I just brag about how good I am at shooting. I'm learning just like the rest of y'all. Some of you guys know more than me in certain aspects, and sometimes I know more than you guys in certain aspects. But this is a new thing for me, so you guys let me know what else I can add on to this dry fire. But as of right now, I'll show you guys what I do, my procedure, my shooter's checklist when I go through this. If you guys are wondering, no, I don't usually run my sling when I'm trying to shoot further distances, but I don't feel like taking it off right now, so it's really not in the way, but I understand if you guys prefer to have it off. So what I do is I try to square my body up with what I'm aiming at. So I have these air filters that I have laying over here in the corner. So I'm squaring myself up with that. I'm trying to square up my shoulders as well. And I have my legs spread out, you know, not too far past my shoulders, but enough to feel like I have control and be comfortable. When I go to get contact with my rifle, I don't drop down to the rifle and then pull it into my shoulder. I find that to be very iffy. Sometimes it's in the same spot, sometimes it's not. I've been watching a lot of Philip Velayo's videos on shooting long range, and I really like his checklist. So if you guys want to learn more about long range, I would definitely follow his channel. That's where you want to get all your information from. I'm just showing you what I do for dry fire. So what I'm going to do, like I said, square up, and then I'm actually going to bring the rifle up to my shoulder while I'm up like this. Because I know if I'm squared up, the rifle is gonna be pointed where I need it to be. Now, another thing I do is when I drop down, I think people call this loading into a bipod. I could be using this term incorrectly, but when I drop down, it kind of puts a forward pressure onto the bipod. And the rifle sits exactly where I need it to be, in the pocket of my shoulder. So with this hand, I kind of bring this over to my shoulder, just like so, and it's kind of resting there now, but I don't leave it all just sitting on my hand. My shoulder is doing most of the support, and the hand is giving it just a little bit more support. If I need to adjust where I need to aim, I'll actually move my body left and right as opposed to forcing the gun to move, because when I do that, it's not aligned with the center of my spine. And from an instructor that I've gone to recently, he's told me how to control my breathing and how to see what my natural point of aim is. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take a deep breath and see where my reticle lands. When I'm exhaled, I want my reticle to be exactly where I intend to shoot. So now I have it where I wanted to shoot, and to test if my body is fully relaxed and I have a natural point of aim towards that target, I'm gonna close my eyes and take another deep breath. I opened my eyes back up, and the reticle was a little bit to the left of the target, so I'm not where I need to be. So I'm gonna make a small adjustment into my posture, try to relax, and I'm gonna do that again. Close my eyes and take a deep breath. And this time, the reticle was at the same point where I closed my eyes. So now, this is where I work on my trigger pull and my breathing. So I want to breathe in and out like I just did to see where my reticle would land. And as I'm exhaling, during that respiratory pause is where I'm going to want to pull the trigger. I'm not yanking the trigger. I'm actually just going to follow through all the way back until that trigger snaps. If I'm forcing it and like just yanking it so I know when the trigger's going off, the reticle will jump around and I'll miss. Up close, you can make more errors with your trigger pull, but further out, those small little nudges can be like 3 feet, 500 yards out. So I'm gonna follow through all the way. Also, I prefer to shoot with my hand, all my fingers on one side of the gun. I used to try to do it this way, and I find that I was squeezing the handguard, I was squeezing the pistol grip every single time, and for some reason my brain is just wired not to do it that way. I'm sure I could train into it, but I find that this is the easiest way for me to do it. Get on target, get a couple of breaths in so I can see where my respiratory pause is. Now, I'm gonna go for that shot after I get past, or once I get back to my respiratory pause, and I'm gonna follow through. And that was a good trigger pull. So when I pulled the trigger, the reticle didn't move at all. I followed through, and that's something new that I've been working on. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I know this is something a little different than what I usually do, but I try to make this channel more educational based, and I want everyone to get better at shooting overall. I don't consider myself an instructor. I don't consider myself an expert shooter. I'm just a regular civilian like some of you, maybe not all of you. And I want to spread any knowledge that I learned down my path of learning how to shoot firearms. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you on the next one.